Good morning. Welcome to a public and premium video discussion. I'm going to combine them both today because I am concerned about the significant ice threat that is starting to show up here in the model guidance that we're going to talk about today, and I'm seeing with the observations. I really wanted to make it clear via the science and via some of the basic observations on what is happening here. So this morning we have our first wave coming through, and it's pretty weak. Granted, maybe you might see 5 snowflakes out of this at most. It's scattered, it's broken up, and really what's happening is that it's helping to increase moisture in the atmosphere. So it's going to be a pretty cloudy day today. Most of today will be pretty quiet. You'll get some spits here and there of some snow, sleet, and rain, but nothing really significant until we get to this evening. However, take a look at your dew points. They're in the mid-teens, lower 20s, even down towards southern New Jersey, where we do have some precipitation in the form of rain. It's in the mid to upper 20s. This is really important, okay? You have a low pressure system that's going to be tracking through the Delmarva Peninsula, through southern New Jersey, and then to the south of Long Island, which means winds remain from the north or northeast for much of the region, and especially around northern New Jersey. Northern New Jersey, the Hudson River Valley, and Connecticut. Remember those areas. And yeah, northeastern Pennsylvania too, but there's a reason why I'm focusing on that area, okay? So you have dry air in place. You have a storm track to your south, and you have moisture that is invading the region. That's the first thing. Just keep that in the back of your mind, and let's just walk through all the observations. Now, here is our main storm back here. Now, there are just waves of low pressure all over the place, from basically southeastern Oklahoma all the way up through West Virginia, and these waves of low pressure are marching through. And the first wave basically approached the southern mid-Atlantic. It produced some rain and snow around Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and it tried to push into the Philadelphia metro. Really didn't make much of an impact. A few flakes here and there, and that's about it. There's your trace, Philadelphia, pretty much. Okay. Meanwhile, our next storm's starting to interact here. It's starting to get itself organized. This is all within the subtropical jet stream. We have 2 jet streams in this case, the polar and the subtropical. Polar has the cold air, subtropical has all the moisture. There's a third one called the Arctic branch, which is not an issue here, but that brings the really cold air. We're talking about like highs in the teens, stuff like that, but not an issue this time. So when we take a look at the various levels of the atmosphere, first of all, we start at the surface, right? And here's your stationary boundary right here, just hanging around. We have this high pressure system that's starting to leave, and another cold front that's coming in on the way. When we take a look at the mid-levels of the atmosphere, we'll start at 850 millibars. You can see cold air is in place. Here is your very weak warm air transport. We know that because winds are going from south to north, and it's basically running perpendicular to the isotherms. The stronger the cold air or warm air transport is determined by how many of these little boxes you can make. Okay, so the more little boxes you can make, the stronger the transport of that air mass. Okay, so in this case, the boxes are kind of strung out here. Okay, here is your subtropical shortwave. Here is your polar shortwave up here with this trough. Keep that in mind again in the back of your head when I show you some of the model guidance. Taking a look at the 850 millibar winds, again, you can see what is happening here. Our winds are starting to organize, but we're not really seeing a strong push yet. All that is associated with this trough back here. So again, that would explain why you're seeing most of your precipitation here back towards the mid-Mississippi River Valley and off towards the Tennessee River Valley, and kind of sporadic right now. It doesn't look all that impressive. You're probably wondering what storm. It looks like nonsense on the radar. But wait, because this slug of moisture is heading our way for late this evening and tonight. Now at 700 millibars, there's your moisture. Okay, now this moisture transport is starting to head towards our neck of the woods. Again, timing for this evening. So right around the evening rush hour, you should start to see a lot of precipitation really start to organize and develop. At 500 millibars, you're starting to see the wind starting to increase, right? Again, keep keep this in the back of your mind when I show you some of the model guidance. And here's 300 millibars. This jet streak here is going to enhance what we call photogenesis. That's lifting in the atmosphere, okay? So it's in a perfect position to enhance that. Meanwhile, when we take a look at photogenesis, this slug right here is what is going to make for a very tricky forecast, especially just north and west of New York City and just west of Boston. This lifting parameter, remember, when you lift air, it cools. Well, if you have very marginal temperatures, let's say at 32, 34, somewhere in that range, and you have rain, then you have this strong lifting, it changes over to snow, temperature falls down below freezing, then it goes back over to rain as it leaves, but because of that snow, it leads to temperatures holding around 32. That's where you start getting into a bit of an icy problem. So when we take a look at our satellite picture, you can see our storm is organizing here. Here's the subtropical branch. Here's the polar shortwave coming in. They are not going to phase. They're going to interact, but they're interacting in such a way, in the way that the orientation is set up, that this shortwave is going to act like a hammer and string this out. So that's why we're not looking at a strong storm. But that's important, because the reason why it's important is that the storm does not produce strong warm air transport at the surface. In other words, the surface doesn't warm up as vigorously as if this was a strong storm. So that means that the air mass ahead of this storm only moderates so much. It pretty much impacts southern New Jersey, but New York City Metro, suburbs north of Philadelphia, not as much of a significant impact. And remember, the storm's passing to your south. So you're dealing with northeasterly winds to northwesterly winds. Notice I don't say anything about southeasterly. That's only around the southern New Jersey coast, where definitely it's going to be raining. Not really that much of a big deal. But this is the key point here. Because this storm doesn't become amped up and super strong, that means that warm air doesn't invade as far north at the lower levels of the atmosphere. Mid-levels, no doubt. Lower levels, that's where things get tricky. Meanwhile, you can see lifting is all starting to intensify. Remember, the stronger the lifting, the higher the cloud top, the colder it is, and the more we start getting these shiny colors. So these shiny colors are all heading towards our neck of the woods. Okay, so you get it? So let's take a look at some of the model data. This is from weathermodels.com. This is the European guidance that I'm using here. Again, this jet streak right here is important because what it does is that it allows the atmosphere to rise. So you see how everything's kind of spread out here? That means that the rising motion in the atmosphere is able to vent out. So you're rising, venting out. Okay, you're rising, venting out. And the stronger you do that, the more you cool the atmosphere, right? So this environment is perfect for that. Meanwhile, let me show you 500 millibars. Here we are. Now, remember what I said about that polar shortwave? Here's the hammer. Boom, right? During this time period through tomorrow evening, there is your hammer right there, okay? Meanwhile, you have your blocking here. Why is that important? Because this forces the low pressure system to track through the Delmarva Peninsula and to the south of Long Island rather than cutting up towards the Great Lakes, which leads to a colder solution. Now, that rock that is crushing our shortwave, what it does is that it strings it out. Notice it's not very strong, and these two remain separate. So that means, again, that this would tell me the storm is not going to be super strong. It's not going to be intensifying rapidly or anything of that nature. It doesn't do that until we get to roughly Wednesday afternoon through Thursday morning, and that's when we're going to see strong winds on Wednesday. But it basically remains separate until it gets to that point off the coast, in which that point doesn't really matter that much. So when we take a look at the latest mid-levels as far as 700 millibars, here we are for this morning. Now you see our first slug of moisture coming through. In the afternoon, we dry out a little bit, and then here comes our second slug for this evening on through tomorrow morning. So basically two waves. The one that's moving through this morning kind of preps the atmosphere, gets a little bit more moisture in the atmosphere. That's why it's going to be cloudy for most of the day. And then the second slug is the one that we really have to worry about for this evening on through tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, at, let's see, 700 millibars lifting, this part right here, you see that right there, overnight tonight? This is a sign of vertical velocities rising up in the atmosphere. So again, rising motion in the atmosphere, you're seeing it developing locations along and to the north of this lifting here. That's where we're going to start to see that snow mixing over to rain and back over to snow as you get stronger lifting. So basically what you're going to be dealing with, where locations stay as in the form of frozen precipitation for this evening on through tomorrow morning, will be bouts of snow mixing back over to rain when the lifting leaves. Then as another wave of strong lifting comes in, it'll change back over to snow, and that mix back and forth is just going to create an icy mix. Not much in the way of snowfall. The max here I see via strong lifting might be 5-6 inches, and that's mostly for higher elevations. The primary snowfall amount probably be around 2 inches on cold surfaces. The concern here is the icing. That is what I am worried about. And so when we take a look at 850 millibar temperatures, there is no doubt that we warm up. Everyone is going to be warm enough to no longer support all snow. Okay, the only locations that may remain mostly snow but some sleet mixing in might be the Poconos, the Catskills, up towards central Hudson River Valley, and of course portions of New England, maybe northern Connecticut. But you can see this environment, just without looking at anything else, would suggest that this would be rain, right? Now here's where things get tricky. When we take a look at the surface temperatures, which should show up any minute, this is where things get really tricky. It showed up now. Okay, so notice as we get through this evening, our surface temperatures are not really warming all that much above freezing. So I'm concerned about right here. Okay, the storm is passing to our south. Now there's our warm-up heading towards the Jersey coast. Okay, New York City starts to warm up above freezing, but look at these temperatures over northern New Jersey, 30, 31, 32. Again, 850 millibars, warm. That snow is changing over to rain at that level. But as we get down towards the surface, we're right around freezing here. So a little jump here and there could make all the difference here. And so that is what is the concern here, is that you might see rain on your radar. You may look out the window and say, oh, that's rain. But the problem is that it's 31 degrees and rain, which means that you're going to get some ice accretion onto your surfaces. So that is the primary concern here when I take a look at the model data here. Now, again, when you have model data like this, it's usually a little bit overdone, okay? The potential of getting over a half an inch of ice is really small, but it's present. So, you know, you go over the range anywhere from 0.2 to 0.5. But my point here with this is where you guys really need to focus in terms of sleet and freezing rain in these locations here, okay? Your urban areas, you're going to just stay at, let's say, New York City might stay at 35. It's a raw, wet 35 with rain. Okay, so that is the factor here, okay, that I really wanted to bring out and make clear. So here's what we're expecting here, and I will move this here a little bit so that you can see it. Okay, so for today, spitting snow and rain and sleet, okay, not really anything too heavy on through about 5 p.m. From about 6 p.m. on, you'll start to see precipitation break out. I would say that this initially is a burst of snow changing quickly over to rain, this area right here, because of the lifting, and temperatures are marginal. Right along the southern New Jersey coast, let's say Atlantic City, Wildwood, Cape May, that's pretty much rain, okay? Sorry, guys. Then moving beyond that point, you can see for this evening, okay? Let's say for the evening rush hour, 6, 7 o'clock, you start to see that snow really break out. And then this is where things get really tricky around here, okay? So New York City, change over pretty quickly over to rain. Again, watch out for that initial first burst that may push you over snowfall totals that are currently expected. I don't think so, but just to caveat there that is possible. But again, to the north and west, this is where I am worried about, okay? This right here, where it's showing rain here, the difference here in terms of surface temperatures is the difference between 33 and 32. So you get a little bit of lifting, you're right back down to 32 and you have freezing rain here. So I'd be real careful for tomorrow morning on through tomorrow afternoon with this precipitation. New York City Metro, Long Island, Central Southern New Jersey, Philadelphia Metro, Southeastern Pennsylvania, it's just rain. But just north and west of those locations, that's where I think we're going to be dealing with one heck of an icy mess here. Steady snow as you head up towards the Catskills on through southern New England. And then all of that clears out by tomorrow evening, and then we get pretty windy. So again, this is pretty much what I'm expecting here. In the D area, well, actually, we'll start with A. A, pretty much snow to rain, trace maybe 2 inches of snow at the very start, as maybe a burst, most locations around trace, I think. Then in that B zone, all right, this is where things get really tricky. 2 to 5 inches possible on cold surfaces, where you get that snow mixing back and forth. 1 to 3 inches on your roadways. The primary concern here is the trace to 0.2 inches of ice just north and west of New York City. Zone C is where I am really concerned about the icing. This is where the low-level cold air is thicker, where you have a good chance of seeing 3 to 6 inches of snow. Most locations around 3, but again, watch out for that heavier burst possible at the start that will enhance your snowfall totals. And then your primary concern is anywhere from 0.2 to 0.5 inches of ice. That is significant ice that would lead to power outages, very dangerous driving conditions, just very bad situation. So definitely just be aware of that. And frankly, I mean, I would love for this to bust because no one likes ice, okay? And it's always a bad deal. And then up in the D zone, that's where I'm expecting mostly snow, maybe mixing with a little sleet from here and there. About 3 to 6 inches of snow would be possible. This is where you're more likely to get that 4, 5, 6 inch type snowfall amount, but that sleet might weigh it down a little bit. And then zone E, that's basically over the northern New England and off towards the Great Lakes, basically about trace to 2 inches as they missed out for the most part. So it's going to be a rather stormy start to the week. By Wednesday, all of this clears out. We start to see a cold front move through, maybe a flurry or two. Temperatures range from the mid-20s for lows, mid-30s for highs. On Thursday, Friday, high pressure and complete control, but it's going to be very chilly. Talking about lows in the single digits to mid-teens over the interior, upper teens to lower 20s along the coast. High temperatures basically in the lower to mid-30s over the interior, mid-30s to around 40 degrees along the coast. The further south you are, like Atlantic City, that's where you probably see 40. On Saturday and Sunday, high pressure pushes off the coast. That means warmer conditions, but dry. Look for lows in the lower to mid-20s, highs in the lower to mid-40s on Saturday. On Sunday, look for lows in the upper 20s to lower 30s, highs in the mid-40s to lower 50s. And on Monday to start the week, next week, high pressure and complete control. There's some rumor of a storm, but I don't see it right now. Most guidance just kicks us right off into the Atlantic with no threat whatsoever. So right now, just expecting high pressure with clear skies, lows in the mid to upper 20s, highs in the mid to upper 40s. That is your forecast discussion for today. I hope you enjoy it. As always, please like, share, subscribe, let your friends and family know where you can get the best weather information from. And as always, stay safe out there.